Assalamu alaikum. So in this short video I am going to discuss how can we get the data from MySQL table and convert it into CSV format, which is comma separated value file, and then we shall convert it into ListView, which is a component in MIT App Inventor. So this is our overall working, that we shall get the data from MySQL. So MySQL will give us the data, and then we shall use a PHP file. PHP file will convert this data into CSV comma separated value format, and then we shall send this data to MIT App, our app, and that app will show it in the form of list view. Now for example, this is the list. Now this is the list which consists of different all the data rows. Now from here, for example, this is, we select any one of that list. As soon as we select it, it will be transferred to the next screen where the detail of that selected data would be shown over here. Now let me show you how does it work. For example, this is a sample project. How to log in and how to register for the new user, we already discussed it, so I'm not going to talk about this over here. Let's go to screen 2. So over here we have few buttons. This is to go to screen 1 and screen number 1. So here this button will actually show the data. Now first of all, let me show you, this is my data, my database, and when I press this show data, so it will retrieve all the data from here, from these 9 records, and these 9 records are visible over here in the form of these in the form of a list. Now it can be just a name, it can be just an ID, it can be anything, because I used a simple query, the query which select everything from this table, so that's why all the fields of a particular records are visible over here. You may select only name or only ID or anything else, so that would be displayed over here. Now when we select, for example, I select the 6th row, as soon as I selected, that data would be displayed over here. That is for just for the testing purpose. This is actually not required, but just to show you that when this is clicked, that ID and the data is displayed over here, then automatically it transferred to the next screen, and as soon as the screen number 3 is started, the data which was selected on the previous screen, that is displayed over here. Now let's go to our file. This is our PHP file. It actually over here, this is already been discussed to start the connection, to create a query and to run the query, and this is our actual working for a specific to this process. We run this query and store the result in the result object, and then we open up output. This is a file. It can be a CSV file, but if you want to store the data in the file, over here I do not want to store it, but I want to transfer it on the stream directly to this output stream, so I just put the link of the output. So when we run this query, we get the result. We get the result, convert it into data, means a row would be selected from the result, convert it into data, and for that data is now this is an array, one row of the record, and that one row of the record is now converted into comma separated variant using this this particular function fput csv. Now we can close and exit it. When we run it, we get the data like this. So so that file actually return the data or everything from a particular record, then there is a space, then record of the second data, then there is a space, then record for the third data, and so on. So there is a space between all the every two records. Now when we receive this data in MIT App Inventor, see over here, this is on screen 2. So screen 2, when we press the button show data, we go to this particular URL. This is the same URL as shown over here, and we call web1.get, and as a result, when we get the response, we do not save it, we put it false. If there is a file, so we can save it. Now I do not want to put it in a file, so I put it in save response is just false. Now create a global variable. Now because I'm not going to save the data, so I actually receive a text from the web1. So if I save it by putting it true, then I have to use another option of the web1, which is web1.get got file. Over here I do not receive any file, it is just a text. So that text is this which I receive. I get that response content and then I split it into spaces, as I told you over here, because between every two records there is a space, so I can split this space. I can use the space to split the data. So all data means all the rows are split in different in the form of a list, and that all these lists, all these values of the list is now stored in the list view as the element of the list, right? So this is what you can see over here by pushing this button show data. Now this data is displayed right? So the content is received, content is split at every space, so a list is achieved. That is just a row, one row, and then second row, then third row, and then we put all these rows as the element of the list view. Now when we select a particular element from here, particular row from this list view, so we get the ID, means its index. See, selection index and selection. So you can take any of these two. You can take the selection index and then you can store the selection index and search the data again, or you can get the selection. So in this case, in our case, I am just getting the selection index as well as the selection, so both values are displayed over here. For example, when I press this 8th row, so the 8 will display over here and the complete data, which is the selection, will display over here. So 8th row 8 and then selection, then go to the next screen. Now when it goes to the next screen, before going there, let me talk about this one. There I call this tiny database 1, clear it. Then I store a value in that tiny database with the tag, means the name of the value is item selected, and what I store over there, the value to be stored, is the item which was selected from the row, right? So list view selected index or the selected selection, I put this selection and as a tag and store it in the database. Now this tiny database is actually our device based small database, which can be used to transfer the data from screen number 1 to the screen number 2. Over here I am using it to transfer the data from screen 2 to screen 3. So when the screen 3 is appeared, you can see over here, as soon as the screen 3 is appeared, there are two buttons you can see, to go to screen 1 and go to screen 2, and the third option is as soon as the screen is loaded, it is initialized. So again we call the database and we get the value of that tag which was saved in the previous screen. And if that tag is missing, so there can be any default value over here. But we have saved something over there, so we can get the value of that item of that tag, and that all that value would be stored in the label1 dot text. So you can see that when it is screen 3 is initialized, so all that text which was saved on the previous screen is displayed over here. I hope that all this thing is clear. You can see all the components, all these blocks over here, and as I have discussed, this is to show the button. We actually call the particular read file. That file read and return the data. That data is split on spaces in the form of different rows. Then we can store these rows or as the elements of a list. Then when the list is selected, so either we can get the index or we can get the selection, and then we can store that selected item over here, and that can be called on screen number 3. Now we can, or even on the screen number 3, again we can call another PHP file, and from that PHP file we can search the detail of that selected item from the MySQL database. Now if you have any other question, you can write comment, you can ask in the comments. Okay.